If you're a boxing fan and never want to miss a fight, Boxing Showtimes is the app you need. This is a professional boxing schedule in your pocket that keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world of boxing. Download now.
Alright people, review of the week time. So, a lot to talk about here. A lot to talk about some of the news that came over the last few days. But we got to talk about the 3 cards. 3? Some of you may be thinking 2 cards, G. No, there was 3 cards on last night that had fights on that I was interested in. The first one, now I only seen F.A. Ajagba versus Joseph Goodall. This was apparently a rematch, I believe, from their amateur days. Look, we know who Ajagba is. Goodall, he'd already lost once to Justice Hooney, who is a very, very good up-and-coming talent from Australia. So he went in there with Ajagba. Ajagba stopped him in 4 rounds. Looked really good doing it. You know, Ajagba, since he lost to Frank Sanchez, and in that fight, he was dropped in that fight, he was outboxed, and he was really afraid to let the hands go. He was really afraid to let his hands go against Frank Sanchez. That was also on the undercard of Fury versus Wilder 3. Now, since then, he's obviously had his win over Sebastian Shaw, which, you know, it was a good performance, to be fair. Sebastian Shaw was undefeated, but he actually lost Sebastian Shaw to Joseph Goodall in his last fight. Then he fought Zan Kazabutski, who he won that fight via disqualification. He's with Top Rank. I'm just wondering, because he's with Top Rank, Kazabutski was originally meant to be facing Big Baby Anderson. I'm wondering, are they looking to do that fight next year? The way, look, Ajagba has serious punching power, but I wonder how well does he take a shot? How would he deal with Anderson's energy, his work rate? That'd be a good fight. I reckon that's a fight Top Rank will be looking to do next year. It's in-house at the end of the day, so really, what have you got to lose, to be honest with you? And it would make more sense. It's a step up. You know, Zan Kazabutski, different style, albeit, but that was who he was originally meant to face. Instead, there was, I think, visa issues, so he faced Charles Martin instead. When they got the issues sorted, Ajagba took care of him. Why not do it early next year? Let's see. In terms of the Monaco show that was on last night, I only seen 2 of the fights on it. So I didn't see this fight live. It was this big, and it was a huge knockout. Absolute monster KO. I'm struggling here. I'm really struggling. Not the Shangi, I think it's how you pronounce that name, who was the 12-0, I believe he was South African, light flyweight world champion. And he got absolutely, like, big knockout in the 2nd round. Big. And you don't see very often 1-punch knockouts like that at light flyweight. Certainly not at those low weight divisions. Really, really big knockout, really good shot. But the main fight, I should say, we were all looking for, there's only 4 fights on this card. Really few fights on it. Was Joe Cordina versus Edward Vasquez. I wasn't massively hyped for this fight, to be honest with you. I thought it was just a run out for Cordina. I think that they should be looking at O'Shaq Foster. They're probably going to look at someone like Lee Wood. Now, it depends what Lee Wood wants to do. If they do the Josh Warrington rematch at 130 pounds, which, because both guys are apparently moved up to 130, Eddie Hearn might want to do that fight because it's a decent money fight. You know, there's an interest in it. Warrington, you know, can say, well, look, I was winning the fight pretty comfortably until I, you know, let my guard down. So they might do that. But they're the main 2 options I see for Cordina at 130 pounds. It was a good fight. I've no issue with, some people were saying robbery. No, I've no issue with Cordina getting the result. To be honest with you, 114, fair enough. 116, 112, which were the other 2 scorecards. Fair enough. Like, I mean, it wasn't a rout for either guy. You know, if a judge came with a 118, 110 scorecard, I would have been like, huh? But no, again, completely fine. No issue with Joe Cordina getting the decision. I think sometimes, and we've all fell victim of doing this, that when we think a fight's going to go one way, and we think, all right, Cordina's probably going to win this fight fairly easy, might go the distance, but he should win it easy, and it's competitive, you end up looking at a fight and thinking, oh man, that guy did. Nah. Cordina was the winner of that fight. Again, I don't like the Monaco shows, I have to say. It is really just, there's no atmosphere. I think it takes a bit away from the fights, to be honest with you. It gives you that kind of memory of the boxing behind closed doors, which I didn't particularly like. And I think that Eddie Hearn, to his credit, since he started with Matchroom and taking over the boxing, he's done these little kind of gimmicky things, you know. So he's done the Monaco shows, and he's also done fight camp. For me, and I know it's not the easiest to do in a backyard to do a show, but they were way better. I much preferred the fight camp concept to this. I really did. I guess because, you know, in Monaco, he's obviously getting money to do it. He's obviously being paid well. Casino de Monte Carlo, which is where they were having this. And obviously Monaco, you know, Monaco, the glitz, the glamour. You know, it really is. It really is where the Grand Prix is. We all know that. So I could see why he does that. But personally, for me, I would prefer, if he's going to, he brought this back because it's been gone since 2019. I would prefer to see fight camp return next summer. If he's going to bring back one concept, I would say bring that back. I really like fight camp. I really liked it. I like the concept of it. You know, apparently the tickets were very, very expensive, but people didn't give a damn. You know, I spoke to people who went to it and they said, don't care, worth every penny. So I would be saying bring that back. That looked way more fun. Way better. In terms of the final show that we'll talk about, 2 fights we got to talk about here, which is on Don King's show. Now, he did this in Casino Miami, which obviously is in Miami, Florida. Don King seems to only put shows on now in Ohio, in the state of Ohio and in the state of Florida nowadays, and he puts them on very sporadically, maybe once a year. Same fighters nearly always on it, and many of them you would not have heard of. Some of them you may have had, like obviously you would have probably heard of Cassius Chaney and Trevor Bryan. I always get this guy's names wrong. It's like Noran Mayalik or something like that. This guy fought, I think they actually, on comms, you just pronounce it as Noel. This guy fought, Noel Gover. He fought Myris Bradis a couple of years ago. It was, 2018. And a lot of people felt that he beat Myris Bradis. That was I think that was one of the World Boxing Super Series events. Yeah, it was in the second season of the World Boxing Super Series. A lot of people felt he beat Myris Bradis. Myris Bradis actually went on to win that World Boxing Super Series tournament. That was the second one after Usyk won the first one. And since then, he's kind of stagnated a bit, but he got a win over Ilunga Makabu, and this was for the vacant WBC Cruiserweight title. Now, obviously, Ilunga Makabu lost that title to Badou Jack back in February. That was on the undercard of Jake Paul, Tommy Fury was it in Saudi or was it? It was in the Middle East. I think it was in Saudi Arabia. I think it was anyway. He lost that to Badou Jack. Apparently Badou Jack is looking to now fight for the Bridgerweight title, so that title became vacant. Don King still has a lot of sway with the WBC, it seems, because Makabu looked shocking against Badou Jack. And, you know, Makabu was only 30, well, according to BoxRec, he's 35 years old. Take that with a grain of salt. Take that age with a grain of salt, I will say that. He doesn't look 35, he looks older than that. And he slowed down a lot. Was stopped in 3 rounds. So, got a new WBC Cruiserweight champion. So he adds his name into the mix of Cruiserweight. But I want to talk about the knockout of Trevor Bryan versus Cassius Chaney. It was a 7th-round knockout for Cassius Chaney. His only loss, his only loss prior to this was to, he fought Big Baby Anderson. George Arias. That's who it was. He lost to him in a split decision in December 2021. Now, Trevor Bryan, he hasn't fought since he got knocked out in 4 rounds by Daniel Dubois last year. And in that fight, he didn't look good. He looked slow as anything. Trevor Bryan, I don't even think he's necessarily that. He's 34 years old. He looked ancient in there. Like, he looked ancient. He was heavier. He was 264 pounds in this fight. And interestingly, if you look, right, so here's a good example, right? He fought BJ Flores in August 2018. He was 236 pounds in that fight. BJ Flores, a career cruiserweight, you know, tried his hand at heavyweight, didn't do much. Been stopped by people like Tony Bellew back down to cruiserweight. Bryan didn't look amazing, but he didn't look too bad. That's the best way to describe it. He didn't look amazing, but he didn't look too bad back then when he fought BJ Flores 2018, 5 years ago, right? Then he had an inactivity stretch, and, you know, he missed the rest of 2018, the whole of 2019, and then he didn't have a fight until he fought Stavern in, January 2021. He was 267, so he's 30 pounds heavier. And it looked like he aged in that 2.5 years. Looked like he aged 10 years. and he's never looked quite right since then. And in this fight, you know, Cassius Chaney didn't look amazing either. Didn't look particularly fast. You know, when you watch it, it's kind of, you watch it, right? You're watching, especially the knockout, right? You're looking at it and you're like, am I watching a slow-mo replay? Or is this the act? Because you're seeing the clock come down. You're like, this is actually their speed. I'm not watching this in slow-mo. They're just that slow. The knockout was brutal by Cassius Chaney. Really, really big, heavy knockdown on Trevor Bryan. It reminded me of, if you've ever seen this fight, I recommend you go and watch it, because massive knockout. Not too dissimilar to this. In fact, very similar to this, actually. I would say that the knockout I'm going to describe now was more devastating, but very similar in how it was set up. They were backed up against the ropes. It was a right hook that caught them bang on the chin. If you've ever seen Amir Mansour versus Fred Cassie from 2014, Mansour knocks Fred Cassie. I think that was early enough in the fight. But he knocked out Fred Cassie with a right hook. Now, Fred Cassie, for those who don't know, was a journeyman. It's fair to say, but normally durable. You know, he'd only been stopped a couple of times in his career. I think Big Farmer Miller, I should say, stopped him. But that was more an injury. This was just Fred Cassie getting laid out. And the shot was very similar. Reminded me so much of the Fred Cassie Amir Mansour knockout. Probably the knockout of the year in 2014. It went a bit under the radar. I think Cathy Duval was the promoter that night. I think it was on ESPN before Top Rank started working with ESPN. And yeah, he knocked Fred. I mean, it was really bad, like really bad knockout. I recommend you go and type it in: Amir Mansour Fred Cassie knockout. Massive knockout. Cassie was out cold for a while. This reminded me of that. This reminded me exactly of that shot there that Amir Mansour hit Fred Cassie with nearly 10 years ago. Big, devastating knockout. In terms of the venue, I mean, yeah, Don King is fairly washed up. He's been washed up for years. When you look at like the arenas and the venues and the quality of just the production of these Don King shows, right? It looks like he's doing these in bona fide leisure centres, and not the kind of leisure centres where you're like, do you want to have a boxing match? These are the leisure centres in a sense of, does your kid want a birthday? That's the type of leisure centres that Don King is doing these in. It looks that bad. It really does look horrendous. It's madness. I mean, Don King is washed up, and for good reason. You know, if you're still working with Don King now in 2023, or you were even signing with him in the last decade, I really have to scratch my head. You know, Vanis Martirosyan said that, Goosen, I think it was Goosen who was promoting him, who's dead now, he's been dead for a while now, he promoted Andre Ward, was the best promoter he ever had, because he was working with them, Al Heyman, PBC, for a while. He actually had a very close fight with Jamel Charlo many years ago, and he left them to sign with Don King. He got a Triple G fight, and that's it. And Don King, again, you know, effed him out of money. This guy has such a bad reputation, is so toxic, has ripped off so many fighters. And the thing is, like, his history is there for the world to see. Doesn't Adrian Broner, didn't he sign with Don King? His history is there for people to see. Why in God's name anybody would even give Don King, even now at 91, 92, however old he is, the guy is still every bit as much a scum as he was back then. You know, people talk about Warren. They talk about Hearn. Let me tell you, Warren, Hearn, Shalom, Aram, they all look like Mother Teresa, like Santa Claus and Mother Teresa all rolled into one compared to Don King. That guy is just awful. There's no other word you can use to describe Don King. He just awful. Horrible man. He really is. In terms of other boxing shows in the States, Showtime have revealed that they've now scrapped their final pay-per-view fight, and instead they're going to be putting a show on in Minneapolis, Minnesota on December the 16th. And it's going to headline by David Morrell, which is going to be interesting to see, actually. I quite like David Morrell. Yeah, it's sad to see Showtime bowing out. And, you know, going out kind of with a bit of a whimper. You know, they've only got their pay-per-view fight coming up with Demetrius Andre versus Benavidez. Looking forward to that fight. I have to say now I am. It's a good undercard. But everything else after that is just like, meh. And, you know, I want to talk about some of the things that are going on over in the States with regards to PBC. And I don't really, well, it doesn't really kind of sashay into the next topic, but it's the rumor mill I'm hearing, right? Because FuryvsNgannou, the rumor mill in the States with regards to their pay-per-view buys, and I know some people don't like the pay-per-view buy videos and stuff like that, and look, sometimes I just feel that there is a need to talk about it, you know, when you see just kind of how bad some of them can be. Apparently, FuryvsNgannou, in the States anyway, was a flop. Like, I'm hearing 66k pay-per-view buys, which is insanely low for a fight that was being talked about as being, you know, this, that, and the other, etc., etc. I think it was $80. I think it was like $80 US thereabouts to buy it, so you can probably understand why. But the rumor mill is that PBC are looking to go to maybe Amazon Prime or DAZN, both streaming platforms. And I really look at that and just think, like, pay-per-view, the model, it's such an outdated model when you think about it. Like, streaming is the way forward, you know, for just any event, not just boxing in general. Like, being able to just pay a monthly subscription just to stream it. The problem is that fighters nowadays are looking for crazy purses, and the only way to get round it is to keep the pay-per-view model. You know, DAZN were saying that they wanted to be the end of pay-per-view, and they're putting on pay-per-views. You know, they're putting on Devin Haney versus Regis Prograis on pay-per-view, which certainly isn't a pay-per-view fight. I mean, neither guy are really well known, certainly in the States or amongst the casuals. It's not a pay-per-view fight. But I'm hearing rumours that Devin Haney is getting a purse something like 6 mil, and I'd imagine Prograis is not getting much less, maybe he's getting the same. So you're talking about the two main eventers potentially going over 10 million combined in terms of how much money is being paid to them. Do both of them even generate that kind of money? No. So they have to put it on pay-per-view. And that kind of sachets into what Eddie Hearn was saying a couple of weeks ago, where now they're kind of seeing, and I think boxing in general is seeing it, now you're seeing the problem with overpaying fighters, in a sense of they're going to keep looking for the same amount of money, if not more, for fights, that you have to put them behind a paywall. So, look, are we moving away from, you know, overpaying the fight? Look, I like seeing fighters get paid, I do. But at the end of the day, you also have to think of it as a business. And you have to say, like, well, are you worth X amount of millions? No. Okay, are you going to recoup X amount of millions by, you know, people buying this, people, etc., etc.? No. Well, how are we going to break even? Going to slap on pay-per-view. Nothing else we can do. You know, whereas if boxing was more you're paid what you're worth, you probably see, well, you definitely see a lot less, but you probably actually see much better cards, to be honest with you as well, because if you think about it as well, there's only so much money to be doled out per show, that the main event being paid X amount of money, they're getting paid the vast majority of it. You're looking at the undercard and you're like, crap, no interest, crap. But then you realise that they're probably only making pennies, the undercard, which, you know, you can kind of get. I don't want to go off on a big tangent about pay-per-view buys and stuff like that. I might do a separate video just on it, on the FuryvsNgannou thing in America, and just leave it there. Virgil Ortiz will make his long-awaited return to the ring, 154 pounds, on January the 6th in Las Vegas. Looking forward to seeing Virgil Ortiz come back. I really am. I like Virgil Ortiz very much. I think he's a very talented fighter. I just hope he is going to be looking like his old self. You know, he's had some issues. So you don't want to see a fighter as talented as him have those issues. And I just hope that when he comes back, he is going to be, you know, fighting fit. The problem with that is, as well, is that, like, he was meant to fight Stanionis, I think 3 times. He had to pull out, and once on fight week. It's going to make people reluctant to accept fights with him, not because they're going to necessarily be afraid of him, but they're going to be like, if I signed to fight this guy, am I going to put money into camp all for him to just turn around and be like, yeah, health's gone again, sorry. It costs money for these fighters, so for a lot of fighters, it's going. That's probably look. Hughie Fury would be a good example. I don't doubt for a split second that, you know, if you say to name me a fighter like a Frank Sanchez or Akhmed Makhmadov, do you want to fight Hughie Fury? They'd probably say yeah, but at the same time, he has that reputation of pulling out of a lot of fights. So when people could be like, you know, oh, I don't particularly want to fight Hughie Fury, not because I'm afraid of him, but because, like, am I going to fight him? If I sign this, am I going to, like Michael Hunter, lose a year in my career waiting for this guy to be ready, all of a sudden for the fight just be set told, yeah, not happening, see you later, sorry about you. Yeah, you missed a year of your career. Sorry. you know. Anyway, Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn reported to being targeted for January the 27th. Principality Stadium in Cardiff, or early February, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London, Eddie Hearn has confirmed. Right, Benn versus Eubank. It looks like it will eventually happen in the UK. What are your guys' thoughts on that? I know a lot of people really don't like that fight. Eddie Hearn is saying that it's a stadium fight now. So it's gone from the O2 Arena, which is where the original fight was going to take place, to now a stadium. All right, let's see, will it do a stadium? I mean, I personally, for me, that's an O2 job, I believe. But let's see. He's also said that he's been in touch with Bob Arum to make Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall the rematch next. Depending on what weight they do it at, you know, I might just make Jack Catterall favourite if it's at 140. If it's at 147, Josh Taylor every day. In terms of 140, so Howard Davis will now face Ishmael Barroso. Interesting, for the vacant WBA interim light or super lightweight world title. That's going to be on the undercard of Ryan Garcia's next fight. Now, here's the interesting thing about that, right? I was under the impression that they were going to order that fight. Yeah, Barroso versus Davis. But it was going to be for the full title that Rowley was going to be made champion in recess. So interim title, it's a glorified mandatory shot. And that's basically what it is. Some would argue that Barroso should be champion because that stoppage again. I mean, for God's sake, Ishmael Barroso was God knows what age. He really is. And he was beaten. He was giving Rolly Romero the business in there. I mean, Rolly is, I've said it once, I'll say it again, the worst champion in boxing, bar none. That guy, Dalton Smith, Adam Azim, I'd pick them all over Rolly. Honestly, like, that guy is that bad. He really is that bad. I cannot emphasize enough. Rolly is garbage. Absolute garbage. I suspect that Golden Boy De La Hoya are looking to do Garcia versus Davis. Whether it be for the interim title, whether it be for the full title, that's what they're looking to do. And to be honest with you, I would heavily favour Ryan Garcia over O'Hara Davis. And Ryan Garcia would beat the living crap. He'd stop him pretty early. Ryan Garcia, that wouldn't even go probably 4 or 5 rounds, him against Rowley. He beat the living crap out of Rolly Romero. He really would. So I think that that's what they're looking to do, to maybe manoeuvre Ryan Garcia into a position where he can, if not get elevated to full champion, challenge for the title. Because, yeah, I see that being fairly straightforward for if they do fight for Ryan Garcia. It says the Ring Magazine have voted against putting the Ring Magazine belt, it's not really a title, belt, on the line for Bam Rodriguez versus Sonny Edwards. This is because the vacant belts are reserved for 1 versus 2/3 in the rankings. Bam is currently number 4. All right, fair enough there. I mean, you can't really argue with that. It is technically, like, I would say Bam Rodriguez has earned the right to be in that name, in that shout for 1 in the division. I know he's only had the 1 fight, or has he even had the fight yet? But Bam Rodriguez is talented, and I think he is going to lift Sonny Edwards clean off the ground when they fight. I really do. I'm super looking forward to that fight. It's probably one of the fights this year I'm looking forward to the most, is Bam Rodriguez versus Sonny Edwards. I think that he is going to absolutely lift Sonny Edwards off the ground. I really do. In terms of boxing scene, what do we have here? David Adelaide on his knockout loss to Fabio Wadley. I know I'm better than Wadley. Alright, well, you didn't look it on fight night, but ayo. That's what you say. You certainly didn't look better on fight night. You look pretty damn shocking, to have to say, on fight night. Eddie Hearn to Tyson Fury. You cannot retire without fighting Anthony Joshua. He'll put you in retirement. I suspect Eddie Hearn is absolutely... since the Ngannou fight, Eddie Hearn has been just, Joshua's going to do this. He's a promoter. You've got to expect him to say that. Fury looked abysmal against Ngannou, right? And on that night, Joshua, I would pick him to beat Fury on that performance. But at the same time, you got to look at Joshua's performances as well. You know, you're only as good as your last performance. Fury's wasn't good. Neither was Joshua's. I mean, Anthony Joshua was in there with Robert Helenius, who was probably 10 years past his best, been knocked out badly a couple of times, you know, early in fights. And he bust Joshua's nose up. He damaged his eye a little bit. and won rounds in there against Anthony Joshua, who was terrified to let his hands go, and again against Jermaine Franklin. Those two performances, you know, Eddie Hearn is speaking like Joshua is the Joshua of old. Well, that might come back. He may very well get there someday, but for right now, he ain't that Joshua. He may never become that Joshua again. So when Hearn is saying he's going to put Fury into retirement, listen, he's saying that Joshua, or that Fury, you cannot retire without fighting Joshua. Joshua shouldn't be retiring without fighting Deontay Wilder. You know? I want to see Joshua fight Wilder, so Eddie Hearn's saying to Fury, you can't retire without fighting Joshua. Well, Joshua shouldn't retire without fighting Deontay Wilder. Not to say that he is looking to retire, but you get what I mean. You get what I mean. Is there anything else? Oh yeah, I seen Lerone Richards has signed a promotional deal with Wasman Boxing. Now, Lerone Richards, I thought he went to Boxer. I actually did. I thought he went to Boxer because he was with Matchroom. He was actually, like, Lerone Richards is not a very charismatic individual. He is not a particularly entertaining style. Eddie Hearn was having him co-main event certain fights. He was co-main eventing Parker versus Chisora 2. And then for some reason he leaves to go to Boxer, does nothing, ends up on a small hall show. I think it was in the York Hall or in one of those leisure centres. And now he's with Wasserman. Look, Lerone Richards is a good fighter, but I think that's where someone thinks, right, I should be doing more, or I should be higher on the card than I am. At the end of the day, you know, Hearn has mentioned it, you're fighting for what you're worth. You're fighting for your worth. Lerone Richards, you go to even, any casual will be like, Lerone Richards, who the hell's that? So he's with Wasserman now, step in the right direction. He may very well find himself on, no, he'll find himself on Channel 5, because they have a deal with Channel 5, so he fights on there. That could be the best thing for him, to be honest with you, because I've always said it, that for up-and-coming fighters who really want to get a name for themselves, the best thing you can do as a promoter is buy time on terrestrial TV. You look at some of the numbers, like Harlem Eubank, some of the numbers he does on terrestrial TV. In general, you know, it's a Friday night, it's raining, it's winter, there's nothing to do. Oh, look at this, there's boxing on. It's 9, 10 o'clock in the evening, nothing to do on a Friday night, there's a boxing match on. Let's watch, free to air. Can't complain. And some of those Channel 5 shows haven't been too bad. I was actually at the one where me, Ade, Akin Barak and David Diamante, we went to it in the York Hall when, I forget who Harlem Eubank was fighting. He was fighting some guy, some journeyman over, I think, 10 rounds. But that was a really good little show. It was a good atmosphere. And I was thinking, you can't complain with this. It's terrestrial TV. You know, it's in a nice little arena where everyone's a bit lively and everyone's happy. You know, so that might be actually a good actual move in the long run to do that if you're going to be fighting on terrestrial TV. I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on everything I talk about in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed the video. Back to our usual Monday morning schedule for review of the week. I think I'll reserve the Sunday for big ones, big reviews of the weeks for Sunday. For now, I'll leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. I cannot emphasize enough how much I appreciate the support over the last couple of weeks, how great it's been on here. You know, we're cruising to 15K. Cruising to 15K. And with all the big events that are coming up over the next few weeks, I hope we hit it. I think we will with time to spare. And to think 20K next year, middle of next year, we could easily do it. With how good it's been over the last couple of weeks, look, it's been amazing. So shout out to everyone. I appreciate it greatly. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Thanks to the sponsors, everything. Just, yeah, cannot emphasize it enough, you know. Foundation is set for next year. It's going to be a big 2024, I think, on here. And in general, you know, we got to move next year. But I think that, amongst other things, it's going to be an absolutely insane year in every aspect. And you know, I like to always thank everyone. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Hope you all have a great week. I hope someone gets some good news this week who's listening. You never know, myself included. I'll leave you with that, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. Peace.